Guys, good evening and welcome to this evening's webinar. Andy Shepherd is my name and I am the clinical lead at ReadyCare. So we're presenting this webinar in partnership with LloydsPharmacy. So we're delighted to partner with LloydsPharmacy. Just a little bit about ReadyCare before we get kickstarted on lifestyle strategies for immune function, which is a really interesting topic. So I'm going to go a little bit longer than I normally do. I normally go 15 minutes. We might push it out 3 or 4 minutes if you guys are enjoying it. So just before I get started, do me a massive favor if you don't mind. Can you just pop into the questions tab, yes, and where you're listening from. So what part of the country or what part of the world you're listening from. So yes, that you can hear the audio inside in the question tab, and just roughly whereabouts your position is just good to know where people are listening from. Also good to know my mic is working. So you might just pop into the questions tab, just a yes, so I know you can hear me, and then where you're listening from as well, if you don't mind. Okay, I'll just give that a second. So yeah, guys, this evening we're going to talk about the different things you can do, especially now with coronavirus floating around the place, the different lifestyle strategies and the things that you can change to essentially to strengthen up your immune system and make you as resilient as possible. So we're all going to be exposed to this at some stage, guys. Super important that we get our immune system as strong as possible. I have a couple of yeses in there, guys. Can I just get the rest of you, if you don't mind, just before we kick off, just in the question tab, if you don't mind. I'm still just waiting on a few of you to make sure that you guys can hear me. Okay, very good. Yeah, I've got enough in there. I think you can safely say you can hear me. All right, great stuff. Let's get started. So guys, welcome to the last couple of you who joined there. So like I say, my name is Andy. I'm the clinical lead at ReadyCare. So I'm the kind of chief nerd, the guy on top of all the health science stuff. Absolutely love it, like borderline obsessed with it. So let's kickstart this. And then what we'll do is we'll do a Q&A at the end. And I want you to pop in your questions as we go along. So don't feel that you have to wait till the end to pop them in. By all means, just pop them in as we're going along. All right, so guys, a little bit about ReadyCare. Like I say, we're delighted to partner with LloydsPharmacy. They're a super progressive group with a real strong connection to their customer base. So the perfect partner to roll out this sort of a what's known as a digital therapeutic, which is an online program for treating the major chronic conditions that we suffer from in the Western world. So your kind of overweight conditions, so being overweight or obese, dyslipidemia, which is high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and then pre and type 2 diabetes. So our results are pretty impressive, and we kind of pride ourselves on publishing our results in international journals. So typically what we'd see is about 6 or 7 kgs weight loss in 8 weeks, which is about a stone. Triglycerides down significantly, which are just a marker of your fat in your liver. It's essentially one of your lipid markers or your cholesterol markers. HbA1c, which is blood sugar, down 1.04%. which is massive. That was enough to cause 48% of diabetics to be non-diabetic at the end of that trial. So we run an online program for preventing and managing chronic diseases, for weight loss, for lowering blood pressure, lowering cholesterol. It could be any one of those goals or any combination of them. So I'm going to fly through the slides. The first thing to know, guys, is when it comes to immune function, there is nothing more important than insulin. Now, insulin is a hormone, and the guys who listen to me regularly, and I see a couple of you in here tonight, are going to be sick of hearing me talking about insulin and insulin resistance. But insulin is the hormone that your body produces when you consume carbohydrate or sugar. Now, not all carbohydrates, so not necessarily, you know, fruits and vegetables and whole food sources of carbohydrate, but large amounts of processed carbohydrate. This is a crucial point. All dietary carbohydrate can only boil down into blood glucose, all digestible carbohydrate. And what I mean by that is indigestible carbohydrate is known as fiber. Fiber doesn't boil down into blood sugar. It's insoluble for the most part, most of it. Now, all the rest of the carbohydrate you eat, so your cornflakes, your Weetabix, your bread, cereal, granola bars, rice, pasta, that all has to be metabolized as blood glucose. This is a recent enough realization when it comes to human metabolism. So any carbohydrate you have, if you have huge amounts of it like that, you're going to have really high blood sugar levels. That leads to something known as insulin resistance. And then insulin resistance, when your body becomes resistant to the action of insulin, has a devastating effect on your immune system. So you can see actually in the top 5 conditions when it comes to leading to poor outcomes from coronavirus. The top 5 conditions are actually all rooted in insulin resistance. They're caused by high levels of processed sugar and carbohydrate in the diet. So high levels of cholesterol, coronary heart disease, fatty liver, that doesn't come from eating fat at all, even though it sounds like it. It comes from over-consuming processed sugar or alcohol, which converts to triglycerides, which is a form of fat in the liver, but it's caused by processed food and carbohydrate. Diabetes and high blood pressure, all linked to insulin resistance. And that's important because what happens is when you eat protein or fat, your body doesn't produce anywhere near as much insulin as it does when you eat processed carbohydrate. So carbohydrates themselves are not inherently bad, but processed refined carbohydrates are absolutely deleterious to human health, really, really bad for your health. So they're the sort of foods that you want to avoid if you want to really strengthen your immune system. So that insulin resistance depletes immune function. So that's the reason we see people with really late stage insulin resistance, so really high blood sugar levels, people like type 2 diabetics and pre-diabetics being 10 times more likely to succumb to and then die from coronavirus. So hugely important that you keep your blood sugar levels as low as possible, especially now. And your blood sugar levels change immediately. It's not something that you need to, eat really well for 8 weeks, or it's not like weight. Your blood sugar levels change within 2 hours of eating those sort of foods. So that's why we've people on the program will say, within a couple of weeks, they'll say, I haven't had a cold and I've had recurring colds for the last few months. Just almost instantly, your immune system will strengthen up if you can get good glycemic control, good blood sugar control. So let's have a look at which foods you want to choose. So what you definitely don't want to eat too much of at all. To be honest, I completely eliminate them from my diet, and I urge anyone I know who listens to my ramblings to do the same. I would reduce or eliminate your intake of processed refined carbs. These are breads, cereals, granola bars, crackers, grains, including whole grains. So the idea that whole grain is better than white is true, but it is nowhere near as good as real food. And I define real food as having less than 3 ingredients. So good examples would be eggs, avocado, cheese, meat, fish, added fats like your butter and olive oil, your leafy green vegetables, your low sugar fruits. They're all absolutely perfect. So if you look at the difference in what happens to your blood sugar levels when you eat protein and fat compared to what happens in the graph in red. So red is refined carbs. Your bowl of cornflakes causes a huge spike in your blood sugar levels. Blood sugar levels go up, the hormone insulin is produced, and your blood sugar levels go back down. And you don't want your body producing high levels of insulin. It leads to insulin resistance, which destroys your immune system. So you want to eat much less of those refined carbs. Now, take a look at protein and fat in this graph. So you'll see there's a huge difference. There's almost no spike with fat, and there's a moderate level kind of a progression in your insulin levels from protein. So protein does cause a little bit of a secretion of insulin through something known as gluconeogenesis. Slipped my mind there for a second. Gluconeogenesis, so production of glucose from high levels of protein. But in moderation, protein is great. Fat, almost no production of insulin. So ironically, contrary to popular belief, fat doesn't make you fat. Insulin does. So that's known as the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity. It's relatively new in the last 3 or 4 years, but it's not just fat and calories that cause weight gain. In fact, if you eat fat but you don't eat a lot of processed carbohydrate with it, you'll probably lose weight. So that's why a lot of my patients are just blown away that they can eat dark chocolate, strawberries and cream, full fat cheeses, full fat Greek yogurt, not count calories, and still lose a stone and a bit in 8 weeks. So guys, when it comes to diet and your immune system, the most important thing to know is that blood sugar depletes immune function. So high levels of blood sugar are just terrible for your immune system. So that's the one thing that you want to do. You want to keep your blood sugar levels under control. And you do that by eating less processed carbohydrate, not by counting calories. Omega-3 to omega-6 ratio is also important when it comes to balancing out your immune function and in particular your level of inflammation. So you've heard of omega-3s, they're in your grass-fed meats, your olive oils, your what else are they in? Fish, oily fish, mackerel, salmon, sardines, things like that. Omega-6 then are really high in what are known as industrial seed oils. So things like canola oil, soybean oil, 1-cal spray, those kind of oils that are basically fats that are liquid at room temperature are typically omega-6. So you get the, trans fats, processed food, they have a lot of omega-6. If omega-6 is higher than omega-3, you're in trouble when it comes to inflammation. Again, this is why a lot of our patients will say they thought they had arthritis or they thought they had really bad back pain and it went away in 3 or 4 weeks of starting the program. So the foods to avoid, and I'm going to fly through to some other slides on the lifestyle bits as well. The foods to avoid are definitely processed foods, cakes, pastries, breakfast cereals, fizzy drinks, breads, including whole grain breads, your kind of rice and pasta and deep fried foods. Alcohol is out in a category all of its own. If you overdo it with alcohol, you don't just deplete your immune function a little bit, you deplete it a lot for 48 to 72 hours. You also deplete your sleep quality for the night after, and sometimes leading into the following night, and that has a huge effect on what are known as, a little bit of science, but natural killer T cells. So your body's ability to fight any infection that comes in, including coronavirus and things like that, is going to be severely depleted if you drink a lot of alcohol and if you don't get enough sleep, particularly if you do both together. You're in serious trouble if you pass any sort of a virus the next day. So all these foods, guys, they're high in carbohydrate, and not all carbohydrates aren't, like I said, they're not in and of themselves inherently bad for you, but processed refined carbohydrates absolutely deplete immune function, and the main mechanism it does that through is high levels of blood sugar, because all dietary carbohydrate except fiber has to boil down into blood sugar to be metabolized by the human body. So again, high levels of blood sugar equals high levels of insulin. High levels of insulin lead to depleted immune function, and in the long run, things like type 2 diabetes and being overweight, having high levels of triglycerides in the liver and so on. So what foods are we left with? We're basically left with the foods that your grandparents would have eaten. So much more of the kind of traditional, kind of old school ancestral diet. So food as nature intended: meat, fish, seafood, full fat cheeses, dairy, things like strawberries, raspberries. The reason those fruits are so good is because they're lower in fructose, which is fruit sugar, and they're higher in antioxidants, vitamins and minerals. So you get all those vitamins and minerals without all the fructose that you get in bananas, grapes and tropical fruits. Liver, I know some people don't like it and some people have a hang up about it and think that because it produces cholesterol, it might give you high cholesterol. It absolutely doesn't. So liver is, to my mind, probably the most nutrient dense food on earth. In fact, it is. If you're being objective, it is. High fiber vegetables and then non-legume nuts. So not peanuts or cashews. Unfortunately, it's always the ones that taste good that will make you fat and cause inflammation. Any other nut outside of peanuts and cashews. Intermittent fasting. So this is a funny one, actually. A lot of people don't realize it, but we have this thing in our heads that breakfast is, quote unquote, the most important meal of the day. That's a marketing slogan by Kellogg's from 1914 in Good Health magazine. It's not the most important meal of the day. In fact, there's a world of research showing that if you skip the occasional meal when you're not hungry, and particularly if you eat within a certain window, it's known as time restricted eating, between, we'll say, 10 o'clock in the morning and 6 p.m. in the evening, you get lower levels of insulin, higher levels of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, lower levels of C-reactive protein, lower levels of homocysteine, and they're just markers for inflammation. And it's really, really good for your immune system. So it also produces something known as cellular autophagy, which is the body's cells start to eat up damaged cells and, again, replenish new cells. So really, really good for immune function. And the Nobel Prize went to Dr. Yoshinari Oshumi in 2016, I believe it was, for discovering that this was the case, that it has all those different benefits. So the next one, guys, sauna. Sauna is incredibly good for resilience and immune function. Now, if you haven't heard of it, look up either Dr. Rhonda Patrick, or if you looked up the Kuopio Finnish Heart Study, so COOPIO Finnish Heart Study. It looked at 2,315 Finnish men and the association between sauna and all-cause mortality, and what they found was mind-blowing. I always say to people, if you could get these results with a pill, everybody would be urged to take it. So what it found was, even when you adjusted for what are known as potential confounding variables, so whether people had high cholesterol, high blood pressure, even when you put them all into the same categories and all the playing fields are even, you get a 63% reduction in Parkinson's, respiratory illnesses, stroke, Alzheimer's, heart attacks, and cancer if you use the sauna 4 or more times per week. I mean, even if you use the sauna 2 to 3 times a week, you get a 27% reduction in your chance of dying from all those. So it's a huge, strong study. The mechanisms are clear. It happens through something known as heat shock proteins and lowering inflammation. But if you want to strengthen your immune system, stress your body with a little bit of heat like saunas, or a little bit of cold, which is known as hypothermic conditioning. Hyperthermic is saunas. So thermic just meaning temperature, hyper meaning high, hypo meaning low, is things like cold showers and cold baths and ice baths and things like that. Both will strengthen your immune system through heat and cold shock proteins, respectively. So just incredible findings. So if you did have access to a sauna, I would recommend it now with coronavirus, but if you had one at home, or if you could get into a really hot bath 2 or 3 nights a week to the point that, you know, your body temperature is going up and you're actually breaking a sweat, or even hot yoga. Hot yoga will do the same thing. They've shown in recent studies. There's a huge reduction in your chances of dying from everything preventable. So from all cause mortality, which is mad. So your chances of dying young from anything are cut in more than half just by getting into a hot box a couple of times a week. My poor wife has been hearing about it for years, and we've a sauna downstairs in one of the rooms has been converted into a little mini gym / sauna. So yeah, utterly convinced it's a really, really good thing for your health. So just as a quick aside, if you've had a recent MI, which is just myocardial infarction, which is a heart attack, any cardiovascular event, if you're prone to very low blood pressure, you're on BP medication, or you've consumed alcohol, don't use the sauna or run it by your GP first. Never use the sauna if you've consumed alcohol. You can actually die in extreme circumstances. So be aware of that one. So exercise, I mean, this is a pretty obvious one, but there are little nuances to this. And I'll wrap up in a couple of minutes with questions, guys. So do start popping in your questions into the questions tab when you get a second, so I can make sure I get to your question. Cardiovascular exercise, anything that kind of works the heart and gets the heart rate up, is good. So sometimes when I do seminars on things like exercise and sauna, people will say to me, the sauna mustn't be good for you because it makes your heart rate go up. But so does exercise, so does spicy food, so does lots of things. Your heart rate going up is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's often good because your body has an adaptive response to it. So when you're exercising, that's stressing your heart rate. It's tearing down muscles, it's making you breathe faster, it's putting your body under stress, your heart rate's going up, your stroke volume is going up, but it's the response to that, the adaptive response to that, that's actually a really good thing. So that's known as hormesis, controlled amounts of stress, which result in your body becoming stronger afterwards. Same thing happens with sauna, same things happen with intermittent fasting and so on. So the pros, cardiovascular exercise, definitely a good idea for immune function, maybe not working your way up to an Ironman or doing marathons every week in the current environment, because there's a temporary depletion of your immune system for a few hours after you really push yourself. But like a 5K or a 10K, no problem a few times a week. Weight training, really good as well, and unlikely to deplete immune function. And high intensity interval training, once you're able for it, once you're fit enough, because you don't want to run yourself down either when it comes to immune function. So guys, the key lifestyle steps, and I'll move to a Q&A in a second. When it comes to strengthening your immune system, the number one thing is glycemic control or blood sugar control. You want to make sure your processed carbohydrate intake is low. You don't want to be eating breads, low calorie muffins, low fat yogurts, fizzy drinks, frozen pizzas, things like that. And what's really worrying actually is, despite the fact that there's a huge correlation between your chances of dying from coronavirus and having really poor outcomes and how much sugar you eat, people are eating more sugar. Breakfast cereal sales are up 27%, chocolate is up, everyone is drinking more alcohol, you know, and that's human nature, to be fair. I think I'm probably included in those statistics, but it's important to keep your blood sugar levels under control, avoid those foods. So a little bit of heat or cold, hypo and hyperthermic conditioning, prioritize sleep, get as much sleep as you can, especially in the current environment. Make sure you're hitting your 8 hours. Exercise, ideally at a moderate intensity, and try to stick to what's known as time restricted eating, eating between kind of sunrise and sunset for optimal immune function. So guys, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll go to a Q&A now. Before we go to the Q&A, and just while you're typing in your questions, the program we run at ReadyCare in partnership with LloydsPharmacy is called ReadyCare Control. And as a special offering to our Lloyds customers, and to Lloyds customers, I should say, we are offering free consultations. So if somebody wants to do a consultation with me, that's free. If you want to go and register for the program, it's €50 for the first month, and it's only €15 every month thereafter with no long-term contracts. So you can pay your €50, do it for a month, and decide that you don't want to continue, although to be fair, that's pretty rare. So the program has meal plans, food guides, shopping lists, all our videos, webinars, and you can see up the top here, book a consultation. So you have the option to have unlimited consultations by phone or Skype for that €15 a month. So there are all the meal plans, shopping lists, cooking videos, all our videos on different bits and pieces that are really interesting, master food rating guides, program resources, and so on. So guys, if anybody wants that complimentary consultation, and there's no obligation to do the program if you just want to have the consultation, just email info@redicare.ie. So info@redicare.ie. Okay guys, if you pop in your questions in the question tab, I will get around to your questions. Okay, so I have a couple of questions coming in here as well. Okay, what's the number one factor when it comes to immune response? No question. Sorry, great question, but there's no question what that is to my mind. Keeping your insulin levels low. I know I'm always harping on about it, and I'm sorry, but blood sugar control or glycemic control. Cleana, I've probably massacred your name, so my apologies. What sauna brand do you recommend? I use I'm not too bothered about the brands, but I personally use an infrared sauna. So it's a full spectrum infrared sauna, and I got that on eBay. It wasn't as expensive as you think. I think it was around 2,000, something like that. And the Finnish saunas are much more expensive. So the Finnish sauna is the benefit to a Finnish sauna as opposed to an infrared sauna is Finnish saunas go hotter. They're the ones that you pour the water on the coal, whereas infrared saunas, they kind of heat you from the inside out. They don't go as hot, but they definitely go hot enough. So if you want to find out the brand that I have, just send me an email, info@redicare.ie, and I'll look up the brand and I'll send it on to you. So are peanuts good for you? What was I talking about? Okay, no, they're not. So what peanuts are they're, when it comes to weight, you might just pop in there, are you talking about weight or general health? The answer to both is no anyway, but okay, you're talking about weight. Definitely not. So nuts are good for weight loss, but peanuts are not, because peanuts and cashews fall into a category of nuts known as legumes. They are high carb, high fat. So your body spikes insulin to deal with the glucose from the carbs, and it stores the fat because insulin causes storage of fat. So that's known as fuel partitioning. You don't want to pair or combine high levels of carbs and fat. So peanuts, cashews, chili nuts, and to a lesser degree pistachios, they're not good. So the ones that you can get in a pub, that's how I always explain it to my own patients, are not a good idea. Guys, if you have any feedback about the webinar, by all means pop it in there as well. Regarding weight loss and immune function, I'm confused about porridge. Is it good or bad? Such a great talk. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Porridge, no, not a good idea when it comes to weight at all, actually. So again, our immune function, if it was the worst part of your diet, like your grandparents would have eaten porridge, you'd do just fine. But if you're eating bread, cereal, granola bars, and porridge on top of that, you're going to have high blood sugar levels. You're going to push yourself towards insulin resistance. And the statistics around the prevalence of diabetes and pre-diabetes are off the charts. It's upwards of 50% as far as I know. It's very, very high. So great. Okay, guys, we will leave it at that. I'll let you get back to this lovely evening. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for answering my question. This is a great talk. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. So guys, if you want to do a free consultation, and you can do the consultation, it'll be me you'll be doing the consultation with. There's no obligation. You can just email info@redicare.ie, and I look forward to talking to you. Have a great evening, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.